Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 51 of Podcast vs. Enemies, a Destiny Massive Breakdown show. My name is Court, and this week I'm joined by my co-host Impetus. Saint is unfortunately under the weather this week, so we wish him the best of health as we enter the final stretch before Lightfall's launch. Speaking of which, by the time this episode is out, we'll be 1 week away. So of course we're back this week to highlight some more details and information hot off the press. No time to lose. Impetus, who are we thanking this week?
Hello, Court. Yes, we do have a few people to thank, some reviewers, and of course some sponsors. Let's start with the reviews here. We got a lovely 5-star review from JWalls88. He's been playing Destiny since midway through year 1, and this is the podcast that he's always wanted but never had. The chemistry of the hosts, the breakdowns, the weapons, activities, armor, and information is so refreshing. So thank you so much for those kind words. Happy to be of service for you. A long-time Destiny player, much longer than myself. So thanks for sticking around. And as always, we do want to give a shout out to our sponsors for the Destiny Massive Breakdowns and Network. These people go above and beyond in their support to keep all of our shows up and running. So without further ado, thank you to Askian Monk, Blackhammer Tech, Binary Wolf, Bryce Aroni, Deacon, Moonlight, The Shazzle, This Moment, and Zenso Cal. Thank you so much, guys. As a reminder, you can send us all kinds of feedback directly to any of our socials or via the Destiny Massive Breakdowns Discord server. Any kind of positive, critical, constructive feedback helps with the trajectory of the podcast and how we present and break down all of the information pertaining to the PvE sandbox for all kinds of Destiny players. So please don't hesitate to reach out. If you've got questions or ideas for builds or episode topics, we are all happy to talk Destiny. And as a note about podcast reviews, we use Chartable to aggregate them, and this may take some time for the non-US listeners' reviews to appear. You can send your review to any of our socials directly. If you want to skip that, we can also extend a special thank you and appreciation to everyone that supports PvE, whether that is downloading and listening to the show, discussing it in the Discord server, or supporting us via Patreon. Thank you so much for all of your support. All right, let's get into the show outline. We are still, well, hopefully we're coming to the end of the absolutely mammoth amount of news and information that we've been getting. It seems like they've saved some of the bigger stuff for last. So this past week, we had Joe Blackburn, the Destiny 2 game director, drop his big Lightfall and the Year Ahead blog post. Big ol' 5,300 word one, outlining some big picture topics here. We also then got another article that I don't think we had known was coming. This is a weapon crafting blog post that was following up on some details that were initially discussed in Joe's article, outlining the future of the crafting system this coming year. And then, of course, we did have the ViDoc, the yearly traditional piece of media. Got to hit on both what's coming in Lightfall and then also a glimpse at the new season, as we finally got that name as well, the Season of Defiance. That will be Season 20. So we got to see a little bit of that as well. And some more details on Neomuna, some awesome concept art, some sketches, all that fun stuff. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We are also going to do a weapon breakdown. Didn't want to forget some of the weapons that came out this season, Season 19. So we are touching on the Foundry weapons. Court and I will be doing 2 each of those real quick, and that will wrap things up for this episode. Okay, let's get into what we did in and out of Destiny 2 last week. I can start off because I didn't do a whole lot. Just hit Pinnacle Cap on the Warlock finally. Had been really unlucky with my drops there. Really happy to see that system is getting some tweaks next year. Did a few raid clears with my clan, helped out a few folks, that's basically been it. Kind of been going easy, just getting ready for next week, since that'll be the week that Wendigo is the adept weapon dropping in GMs, and I'll probably be doing a bunch of that and maybe finishing up a few seasonal challenges. So, yeah, Court, how about yourself?
Much the same here, yeah, just sort of clearing up any minor seasonal challenges, any Age of Triumph. I know that's still going on. I'll be finishing up at the end of this season. And just preparing to do some solo flawless dungeon runs. Duality and Spire. I haven't done those, or I should say I haven't completed solo flawless for those, so I'm just kind of preparing myself for the last week. Got to say, they're both pretty tough. Spire especially, I don't think I'm going to run that on Titan or Hunter. because the final boss just takes way too long unless you're in a Well of Radiance, and you get to bypass that damage reduction for the big wyvern at the end there. So it's a tough one. Both are tough nuts to crack, and yeah, I delaying it, especially Duality, been delaying Duality just so they could fix the various bugs, and I think they have at this stage. I think there's maybe one or two minor things, but it's more stable than before. But yeah, just really taking a little bit of a break and stretching some of those grand strategy muscles over on Europa Universalis 4. I think I've mentioned that before, way back when I went on my summer vacation. I think obviously both of us, we've been, or last week we played through the final or the finale to the season, and probably one of the best cutscenes that I've experienced and watched and been part of, I suppose. Fantastic cutscene, fantastic kind of end to the kind of the end of the beginning, I suppose, the beginning of the end. For Destiny's narrative, we're finally getting into something that's not just, we're just fighting some big bad enemy. And I suppose we are with the Witness next season or next year, Destiny. But what was your thoughts with the finale there, Impetus?
Yeah, the cutscene was really a great treat. I loved it a lot. It's something I had seen. I can't remember where I saw this, but somebody observed that some of the enemies that we fight have this title, the Hive title, Scourge of, and then it's like they're a location or a race that has been eradicated by the Hive. And the boss that we fight at the end of this final mission, right before we go into the cutscene, is this wizard that's I think the title is Scourge of Earth, which is really interesting to think about. This idea that we're fighting some very old, very powerful Hive, kind of really just a very passive, subtle hint that things are definitely ramping up in the universe. And then, of course, building up to that cutscene, which was really crazy. And yeah, it's funny. I've been spending more time in the tower looking around just because the skybox is so different. I don't want to give too many spoilers. Just in case you're listening and you haven't actually seen the cutscene or played the final mission, it will be available for the final week as well. But yeah, the tower just feels so different, and it's kind of a bit nice to just sit there and walk around and be like, yeah, something's off. How about you?
Yeah, no, I just like, we've had some really banger of cutscenes, especially those like during the seasons where we get that particular art style. Obviously, we'll be talking about our kind of review for season 19 and the rest of Witch Queen next week. But just as a very quick recap from me, but I've been really enjoying seeing those type of cutscenes, and then the traditional kind of live cap cutscene that we got with the finale. But yeah. All right. Okay, let's crack on. We've got a lot of topics to come over for this week. So we'll start off with the Joe Blackburn's big kind of highlights, his kind of blog post for the year ahead and Lightfall. So his primary goals for the year of Lightfall all come down to 4 big kind of bullet points here. So number 1 is expand players' imaginations. Number 2 is bring back challenge to Destiny. Number 3 is enrich our content. And number 4 is connect our guardians. So he did list the sort of upcoming seasons. For season 20, we know is obviously Season of Defiance, which will be launching alongside Lightfall. We already know the kind of narrative is EDZ centric, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. He did also reveal very unexpectedly the following season, the season 21, which is Season of the Deep. No other details were given other than we're of course going to be getting a new dungeon as expected. We have the following season, which will be 22. It's unnamed. We obviously don't know anything about that, but we will be getting a reprised raid. Again, we're not sure what that'll be, whether that's, well, there's only really one major raid left from D1, and that is Wrath of the Machine. But every likelihood we could get Crota's End as well, if that's a possibility. Or we get something from D2, like Leviathan, maybe. And then finally, the one before Final Shape Season 23, we obviously don't know any more details other than that we are getting more of a core ritual focused season. So that was a direct quote from Joe Blackburn, where that season will be more focused on core rituals. And of course, we'll get a new dungeon on top of that. Impetus, what can you say about what was he talking about in regards to the seasonal core system and the changes to that?
Yes, they are working on simplifying and also prioritizing really the essential parts of the season model, especially in the model that we currently have. So the first thing that is changing is the Umbral Engram system. Umbral engrams are going away. They will now be replaced with seasonal engrams, which will be stored on the vendor, much like they are on the shacks and then also the drifter in the tower. So you can focus still with these seasonal engrams into these seasonal weapons, but they will now just cost one of these seasonal engrams and then glimmer. Seasonal currencies are also getting removed / reduced. You can now get a key for the final chest, which will appear at the end of the seasonal activity for a given season. The chest is a true upgrade on rewards. It's no longer necessary for regular loot, so these keys that we get to unlock the chest will not drop as often, so the regular activity itself will drop more loot to compensate for this. So the chest is going to truly just be, I think, a bonus upgrade material, not upgrade materials, but an upgrade on various materials and rewards, as opposed to being just yet another thing that we unlock at the end, which is nice. I'm really happy for this change. That seems like a good one there. The keys can drop from the seasonal activity, so you don't have to play non-seasonal stuff to engage with the season itself anymore. That's a great quality of life change. There will also be fewer vendor upgrades, more meaningful changes, and clearer descriptions. Joe said he wants less time reading and more time playing for the players, which I think we can all get behind there. Now, he did clarify that Season 20 is still designed with the this year's seasonal model in mind, but going beyond that, starting in Season 21 and moving forward, things are going to be shaken up a little bit here. They are trying to make each of the seasons a little bit more unique, a little bit different when it comes to how we engage with the activity and then how the activity relates to getting loot and just playing throughout the season as is. So one example that we got for Season 21, it will not have our typical 3x7 vendor upgrade grid. They're moving away from that, want to try some other systems, see how that might work for unlocks and upgrades. The Lightfall seasons will be pushed to be more creative and unique, like Shattered Realm and Chosen's original reveal of the Battlegrounds. And as a reminder, the Guardian ranks will replace the Season Pass levels nameplate that is now shown next to players starting in Lightfall. So that will also be a small differentiation they're trying to make there. Again, I think all of these are pretty good changes. Court, any one of these in particular that really stood out to you as a great change, should have happened years ago kind of a thing?
Well, I think this year has been a little bit of a below average in terms of execution of the seasons. I think especially down to the sort of vendor upgrade grid, it's been very samey. It's been repetitive. The same as the seasons themselves. It's just your usual kind of we've had those great reveals like Battlegrounds, and we've had some great reveals of 6-player activities, but other than that, it's been pretty samey. I think especially this year, we've had it before. Beyond Light had it before Beyond Light as well. We've had similar vibes, but yeah, I think Bungie do need to kind of flex their kind of presentation, and narratively speaking, I've enjoyed the last couple of seasons, and the sort of main backbone of the story going from Witch Queen to Lightfall has been pretty interesting overall, but the execution of each season has been a bit of just needs a little bit of an improvement here. So I'm glad that they've acknowledged that, especially the vendor upgrade grid. I know that's been a bane of everyone's kind of complaint, where we've just been ticking those boxes, I suppose. And same complaint we had with, bounty farming, and everything was anchored to a bounty that you had to complete, and that's just it's moved away to be more like seasonal challenges now. But I think we just need a general reset for presentation for the seasons.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Joe talked about the changes to crafting. We will be talking about this sort of crafting at large a little bit later on after this section, but just as some highlights here. The big highlight here, which I know especially someone in this particular podcast will be not so enthused about. Fewer weapons will be craftable in the following seasons. So non-craftable weapons, starting with Raid Adepts in Season 21, extended to all others after that, will eventually be able to be enhanced, granting enhanced perks, plus masterwork bonuses, plus mementos, etc. And any red border that drops will only be for weapons that have a pattern. If it has a red border, you will instantly know it's important and a valued drop. And additionally, in Season 21, you'll be able to target any craftable weapon with a guaranteed deep sight drop. But again, we'll talk about this subject very shortly. Another subject that they've been talking about, I know something we've talked about many, many times on this podcast, is the changes to PvE combat difficulty. So they have said to increase the combat difficulty, Bungie is taking a two-prong approach to combat. So their first approach is decreasing the ability uptime, but maintain full ability potency. So reduce the strength of resilience in some combat style mods, as we've already seen, and we'll see with the revamped mod system as well, which we'll also talk about in this episode. Their second approach is increasing the combat difficulty by introducing power cap scaling throughout the game. So right now, it'll just be on the seasonal activity, Vanguard Ops, Neomuna Patrol, but they're open to expand that, and they're also open to experimenting on capped light levels and fixed difficulty to come. And the big change, quote, will come in the final shape expansion, so around about a year from now. But this year we'll see a lot more kind of experimentation to the difficulty scaling, and to be honest, we've seen that very recently, especially this season with the approach to heists. We've seen a different approach to, you just have to be a higher light. It's now more capped, and of course we've seen that with Legendary Campaign mode, which we'll see next season as well. Power levels will still be a thing in Lightfall. However, in Season 21, the power cap will no longer be raised at all, which is quite it's kind of buried in this article, but that's quite a big deal.
First time ever in Destiny.
Yep. Number no longer goes up.
Yeah.
What's your vibes with this? I know that we've talked about this before many times.
Yeah, I mean, we all three of us have been very upfront about the fact that we really love the legendary difficulty, so I'm very happy to see that being expanded. I'm glad to see the Bungie's also interested in keeping that around. Yeah, I'm totally open to having more of an emphasis be put on the tiers of difficulty rather than the number that keeps being associated with something like the Adept difficulty, the Hero difficulty, the Legend difficulty, the Master difficulty, and the Grandmaster difficulty. So if we can just maybe shift towards saying this activity comes with both the Legendary difficulty and the Master difficulty, rather than players getting tripped up over what number is next to that, in parentheses, season over season, I think that will be a good thing. It will also help new players kind of get an idea, if we can start standardizing these different tiers to kind of understand what they can expect when a new activity comes out and has the legendary difficulty. A newer player maybe who's already gone through the campaign of Lightfall and maybe also the legendary campaign of Witch Queen will have some idea of what to expect with this brand new activity. I think that's a very smart design choice there. I'm assuming the big change that will come in Lightfall is a rework to power levels entirely. It's interesting though. I mean, the power cap not even being raised in 21, I'm curious to see what exactly that could mean. Maybe it's something else entirely, but yeah, power cap stopping in 21 is definitely going to be a huge shift. I mean, the game is just going to be so different next year. I hope this kind of puts to bed any people who were unironically saying, when are we getting Destiny 3? Because it really does feel like with the launch of Lightfall, but definitely once the power cap stops being raised in 21, we're going to be just in a completely different setting than where we were last year, heading into Witch Queen. I mean, my goodness, almost everything in the game has been tweaked to a pretty significant degree. We know the core playlists are getting tweaked over the course of Lightfall, so I think that's probably the last thing that would still be relatively similar. But yeah, this is a huge, much needed change, and I'm really excited to see the direction that things go. All right, I can do the exotic missions here. Everyone's favorite piece of content. One of the favorite pieces of content. Bungie's listening to us. The exotic missions are not quite going away, not quite sticking around. They are getting a rotator. So starting in season 22, so we'll be halfway through the year, Presage, Vox Obscura, and Seraph's Shield are all being added to a weekly rotation, with the opportunity for more classic missions to be added back into the fold. So hopefully those of you that missed out on playing Whisper or 0 Hour, you may get your chance yet. We shall see. So that is very exciting. That'll be on a weekly rotation again. Very, very excited to play through that. It could be maybe Bungie's answer to how do we keep some of the exotic weapons that we're dropping from those still around while not adding them to the exotic kiosks. So very excited that Seraph's Shield is not going away completely. Really love that mission. I think that's great. Obviously, Vox Obscura and Presage were also fine in their own regards. But yeah, very, very happy with that decision. Also, very excited to talk about the Strike rework. So we've got some updates coming to some what were probably considered some very easy strikes, especially the GM difficulties were quite easy. So they did mention that Lake of Shadows and Arms Dealer are both being reworked, refreshed, and updated to match current strike quality levels. And the current strike quality levels that they gave as examples were Lightblade and Proving Grounds, both in terms of ad density and difficulty. So very excited for that. Lake of Shadows and Arms Dealer definitely needed some tweaks here. They also went on to say that strikes such as Inverted Spire and Exodus Crash are being soft sunset. They will still be accessible from the director, but they will not be appearing in the GM playlist until they are reworked next. And there were no details given on when that rework would be happening, but you should not expect Inverted Spire and Exodus Crash to appear in GMs for a while until we get new information. Another big tweak to GM playlists, the Nightfall playlist as a whole, I should say, Battlegrounds are finally getting to appear in the Nightfall playlist. So again, another example here, Mars Heist Battleground that we have this season, that is going to be featured as a Grandmaster difficulty option next season, season 20. And future seasons will have more Battlegrounds and more revamped strikes appearing in the Nightfall playlist. We were also told, and this is really interesting, 4 of the 6 Nightfalls in rotation for next season will be refreshed or newly featured. So I'm very excited to see what that means. Presumably, that would be Lake of Shadows and Arms Dealer, and then also Mars Battleground, which would leave one other. Probably it must be another Battleground. It'll be interesting to see here what they're all pulling from. Is it also the PsyOps Battlegrounds, the original Battlegrounds, and then the Heist Battlegrounds? That's how I took it. We'll see how that
probably a new strike on Neomuna.
Oh, of course. Yeah. That's probably what it'll be. Bang on there, Court. Yep. So very excited. That's new content for us to break down in a Grandmaster. We always love doing GM breakdowns, especially when it's a new GM2 breakdown. So we'll have the guides out for those, of course, as they are re-released or released if they're brand new. So got plenty of stuff to look forward to there. Great change as well. Interesting to see how Battlegrounds play on a Grandmaster. It could be a really interesting, I was thinking over this here, Court, it could be an interesting opportunity for some roaming supers to shine, given how small some of those rooms are, and the ads typically can be grouped together. Like I'm thinking of Behemoth Titan could be really potent. Arc Staff, Arc Strider might even be an okay option if you can chain things. I don't know. I mean, the strand supers will definitely be quite excellent, and I think maybe a few of the stasis supers as well. But yeah, this could be interesting as long as you don't get obliterated by an abomination or one of the champions. But yeah, very excited to see that. Yeah, don't really have anything else. Do you have anything to say about this, Court?
Well, I suppose this is maybe a bit tinfoil theory stuff here, but Lake of Shadows and Armsteel are being reworked. They're obviously EDZ strikes, so it makes sense. But it's very surprising that they initially, when they mentioned Inverted Spire and Exodus Crash, obviously Exodus Crash does need a little bit of work, but Inverted Spire is one of those that are like, it could add maybe a few more kind of adds here and there. But in general, it's an okay strike, GM. Good one to farm as well. But obviously those two are Nessus strikes. So, the implication is we're going to get some sort of Nessus story at some point. That's the tin hat spin foil theory kind of thing. Really, I know a lot of folks have been wanting brand new strikes. They want 4 strikes that launches with a big expansion. We do too. I would prefer to have massive amount of new strikes that cycles in and replaces some of the older ones, and they can rework them. But having the battlegrounds is a welcome change, and as Impetus was saying there, I think some of those will be pretty interesting in the Grandmaster level. I think ad clearing supers will maybe we know they are getting buffed, not with Lightfall, but at some point afterwards. But maybe their time to shine rather than coming in with. Gathering Storm's a really good one, but the Arc Staff can be up with Radiant Flux for a long time.
Yeah.
The uptime for that, especially in some of those rooms. But we'll see. We'll of course be breaking down those. Exciting stuff. Of course, the exotic mission rotator, Seraph Shields. It's definitely one of my favorite kind of exotic missions, if you want to call it that. Hopefully we see some of the older ones like Whisper and Zero Hour come back as well. There's some really kind of diamonds in the rough back then. So Joe spoke about give a little bit more of expansion with the ritual content refocus, which will be season 23. So more content. Rewards will be pushed towards the ritual playlist following these updates. He mentioned Lost Sectors, which will no longer be the source of a brand new initial drop of seasonal exotic armor. They're going to move them instead over to the core ritual playlists. I think that's a pretty good change there. Like for everyone to get them, because not everyone's capable to keep farming to their heart's content with Lost Sectors, but nice little change there. No longer need all 3 ritual ornaments for the seasonal challenges, and slow burn until so you put the perspective here. It's going to be a slowed burn until final shape. It's going to take the entire year to refresh the ritual playlists and refresh our core activities. So it's not going to just all happen at once. It will be a nice kind of slow burn for all this to get into position. Finally, it mentioned the social connections and the fire team finder. So we know next season commendations are coming. It's going to be used as a kind of icebreaker for meeting new Guardians and rewarding good effort. So, for example, Trials teammates or raid leaders, coordinators, Guardian ranks aim to show the best of the best in the community, people you can trust. Text chat is moving from it's moving to opt out instead of opt in. You still be able to leave individual chats, and they plan to improve moderation, filtering, and even speech to text options. And finally here, they did say, I think we kind of knew this, they never really gave a clear cut date for the Fireteam Finder, the sort of LFG, in-game LFG, but that's being delayed until Season 23. It's the sort of launch of the new dungeon. So again, that's the season before the final shape. They want to truly flesh this out to be a first-class system with keywords, tags, control over fireteam members, automatic joining, or allowing restricted vetting processes to deny / approve individual people who want to join, and you'll be able to queue anywhere in the game for any activity. So really exciting stuff there. Sadly, no mention of Gambit, and
sorry,
this isn't a Gambit pod. This is not a Gambit podcast, so we're fine.
Yikes, dude.
Exciting stuff there. The social connections. I know since 2014, when Destiny 1 came out, we've been asking for an in-game LFG, and we kind of got that with the, well, it's not in-game, but we've got the companion app, which has that a pseudo feature of Fireteam Finder, but it's not in game. It's not fully in game. You can cross pollinate between the two, but not everyone has an application that they can just open up. They just want to go in the game and just click a button, join a Fireteam. Boof, they're playing a raid. So yeah, very exciting stuff there for the sort of social connections, because really Destiny is all about the social.
Yeah. Absolutely. I will say here, one thing that did actually concern me, the text chat moving to opt-out instead of opt-in. I had seen a few people, these were especially people on Twitter, female Destiny players, were a little bit worried about that. I also know there were a few members of the LGBTQ community that were a bit worried by that change, as some people can be quite toxic, and having to opt out instead of having the option to opt in is going to hurt them more than help them. So a little bit concerned about that change. Yeah, hopefully they could rethink that, or at least maybe give some extra settings for people, because that is worrying, and nobody wants to try to log on to Destiny 2 and immediately face harassment for the stupidest of reasons. So bit odd that they moved that decision there, but we'll see if they could change that maybe in the future.
I'm guessing the way it's been worded, I think they're basically turning how the option currently is, you have to opt in, will just be opt out, but you'll have the option to manually un-opt in, if you get what I'm saying here.
I hope so. Yeah,
that'll exist forever, unless you want to swap it back to opt in.
Okay,
that's how I read it.
Yeah,
and they mention about moderation, but yeah, no, absolutely, that would be. I think that would have been great to have a little bit more of a kind of. So what do you mean by moderation? What do you mean by filtering? Just to see how much. I know this is a little bit kind of far off, depending when this actually launches. But yeah, some detail on that, especially in this day and age, how everyone does hide behind the keyboard. And yeah. All right. Well, that was our big Lightfall and the year ahead blog post from Joe Blackburn. Any final thoughts there? We do have specific topics that we'll be talking about. Next up is weapon crafting, but Impetus, you got any other thoughts here?
I mean, I always appreciate these. It's it was kind of a bummer that we didn't get one looking at the Witch Queen in the year ahead, but this more than made up for that. So it's always great. And of course, we are heading to the end of the Light and Darkness saga, so I think this was a bit more necessary than maybe a Witch Queen article, but it's always great to know. And it's great to see what we're getting this year in particular. The big goals, of course, knowing that there is that core ritual focus season coming at the very end is kind of a huge knowledge, and then also knowing exactly when the Fireteam Finder is coming out, that's great as well. So always appreciative for the Mammoth article to read through, even if it's full of great information. So good stuff, Joe. Good stuff as always. All right, let's talk about weapon crafting. We did get a follow-up article. This one I think we weren't quite expecting, but they were obviously expecting. This came out the next day. This is Enhanced Weapon Crafting is the title of this article, also on Bungie.net here, talking specifically about the crafting system and how that's going to look in its second year. And so we got a few summaries to go over here, some big bullet points. So one of the big things that they wanted to touch on, get that right out of the way, no more deep sight attunement objectives after Lightfall launches. So that was kind of a big part there. They want to cut down on the confusion regarding deep sight attunement and of course simplify that whole process altogether, which is a great change there. Another big change coming in that's very helpful, huge quality of life change. Only craftable weapons will drop with deep sight resonance, that's the red border, after Lightfall launches. We also, we already knew this, but again, reiterating, resonant and harmonic alloys are being removed in upcoming seasons. And then, of course, we got a little bit of information on what is new to the system here, and that is weapon enhancing. So we will be able to upgrade various non-crafted weapons, their perks on them to become enhanced, as well as some extra stuff like a level and a memento socket. So the first set of weapons to get this will be the Adept Lightfall raid weapons. So you'll be able to enhance those traits, give them a level and a memento. That will be launching a few weeks after the master difficulty of the Lightfall raid launches. So they're going to let us grab a bunch of rolls for the Adept raid weapons, and then they'll release this system. They did clarify that any Adept weapons from the Lightfall raid that you've already acquired will be able to be enhanced once the system goes live, but any Adept weapons from previous Master raids, that's going to be Master Vault of Glass, Master Vow of the Disciple, and Master King's Fall, will not be a part of the system when it launches. They did say, though, they're going to look to expand the system. They didn't say if they're going to expand it backwards or expand it for the future, so we're not even going to entertain that, but it's just going to be the Lightfall raid Adept weapons that will be able to take part in the system when it launches towards the end of next season. Another big highlight point here, deep sight activation. It will be possible to add deep sight to a weapon that will be coming in Season 21. And then weapon level boosting. You will be able to level up a weapon while not having it equipped. That is also coming, this is coming after Season 21. You will still be able to level up crafted weapons the current way if you like, but they will give you an additional way to level up a weapon just by having it, in your inventory, but not equipped necessarily. And then, yes, finally, the big change here, the one that I was not a fan of, the state of craftable weapons going forward. So, in Season 20, the crafted weapon pools that we have will be the seasonal weapons, the Neomuna destination weapons, the base raid weapons, that's the non-adept, and then some miscellaneous weapons, probably, like what we had when Witch Queen launched with the Ragnhild D and Palmyra, stuff like that. Going from Season 21 and forward, it will just be the seasonal weapons and the raid reprise weapons. That's the reprised raid with the refreshed perk pool. That's the weapon pool they are referring to. I can give my thoughts now, Cord, or do we want to keep going?
Let's see. Shall we? Let's give our thoughts at the end of this, because there is a lot of kind of to take in.
I'm perfectly fine with that. No, we can definitely do that here. Do you want to talk about the deep sight?
Yes. So, gave a little bit more explanation with how the deep sights will operate. So we already know that deep sight attunement objectives are being removed. Bungie are overhauling the red border deep sight weapon drop behavior in Lightfall. So if you obtain a deep sight weapon and just want to progress the pattern, you can just dismantle it as we've been doing. If you want to progress the pattern and also want to keep that deep sight weapon, you'll have the option to immediately obtain the pattern without dismantling the weapon. So deep sights will no longer drop for any weapon that does not have a pattern available to unlock. So like for this season, you'd maybe get a Lodbrok drop as a red border, but you can't craft that. So using that as an example for next season, you'll not get that anymore. It'll just be for weapons that you can physically get a pattern extracted from. So when a deep sight weapon drops after the release of Lightfall, it will signify a reward that you want to engage with immediately, rather than it being an afterthought that you might toss into your vault for later. And deep sight will operate like a checklist. So every red border weapon that drops will have pattern progress that can be earned. Mentioned here that they are kind of splitting things off into kind of three big categories in terms of how the new crafting capabilities are for the year of Lightfall. So not all of this is coming with Lightfall. It's going to be throughout this year, whether that's Season 20, 21, 2, or 3. So the big three categories here is your deep sight activation, which is what they call as the manual deep sight. This feature allows you to electively apply deep sight to a weapon that has a pattern available to unlock. Only weapons that have not previously rolled with deep sight are valid for deep sight activation. Deep sights can't be activated on the same weapon instance multiple times. The ability to manually activate deep sight will be tightly controlled, and there'll be some variation in cost depending on the weapon. So they used here as an example, a raid weapon will require additional currencies compared to a seasonal weapon. And Bungie are targeting a Season 21 release for this feature. So, pretty interesting one there. Being able to control what you actually want to focus on. I think that was one of the biggest kind of complaints with getting all these revamped raid weapons. You have to go back and, do the raid that you've maybe done about 50 times already. Do it another 50 times to get whatever you want, or do an encounter 50 times to get whatever weapon you want. At least you can now, kind of almost like transfer a deep sight from one to another weapon that you really want to focus on. So like Trustee. I'm not saying that Trustee is going to have this, but as an example, if the system was live now, like Trustee I would be focusing on right now, because it's the weapon that I have had least amount of drops since Deepstone Crypt has had its weapon kind of refresh. So nice little change. Impetus, you want to take over for the next section here with weapon enhancing?
Yeah, weapon enhancing here. Yep. So this again is starting with raid adepts coming in Lightfall here. They want to expand the enhanced trait perk capabilities of crafted weapons over other weapons without increasing the amount of deep sight that you need to acquire. So they're going to be introducing a new weapon enhancing feature to a very limited number of new weapons. And again, the first weapons to obtain this capability will be the adept weapons acquired from the Master difficulty Lightfall raid. So non-adept base raid weapons will remain crafted for the Lightfall raid. That's. I just want to get that out of the way here. We need to clarify a lot about how this system works, so I just want to get that out of the way. But what will weapon enhancing looks like? It will allow a weapon to be upgraded with an enhanced trait, a level, and a memento socket. It will consume standard currencies and spoils of conquest for raid weapons, and will be applied through a new tiered weapon mod. Once enhanced, you will be able to modify limited aspects of the weapon at the crafting relic. So for the initial rollout here, what weapon enhancing will look like is a system of 3 tiers. At tier 1, you will gain the ability to replace the existing masterwork. This will grant an enhanced intrinsic weapon level, first enhanced timestamp, and a memento socket. For the raid adepts only, it will allow full selection over the barrel and magazine perks. Those perks are individually gated by level, just as crafted weapons currently are. The cost of weapon enhancing tier 1 will vary based on the masterwork tier that is being replaced. Enhancing a weapon that has a masterwork tier value of 10 will be much cheaper than enhancing a weapon with a masterwork tier value of 1. Enhancement tier 2. This will require a weapon level of 11, and it will allow enhancing of the left column trait perk. Tier 3 will unlock at level 17 and will allow the enhancing of the right column trait perk. The enhancement feature will be added to new raid adepts starting in Lightfall, but due to technical limitations, Bungie will not be committing to a wide expansion of this capability to other weapons until they investigate further. I think it's appropriate. Yeah, we want to probably be a little bit limited here. This is going to be a very powerful upgrade for the raid weapons. One thing, though, that is interesting to me, of course, is that traditionally our raid adepts have had an additional set of perks. It's 2 in left column, 2 in right column. I wonder if that's going to be the case going forward, or if this is meant to maybe we're getting rid of that second tier and it's just going to be 1 column, but you will be able to have an enhanced weapon perk on an adept weapon, and that's the trade-off there. We'll have to wait and see how that looks, but I could imagine a raid weapon with double enhanced perks in 2 columns would make for probably one of the strongest legendary weapons, probably on tier with several exotics, if we're being honest, depending on the weapon archetype and the perks. So that's my guess of it. Again, we'll have to wait and see what the rated adepts look like, but that is how the enhancement tier system will work. 3 tiers here, and you will need to level the weapon up to get to tier 2 and tier 3 to get to the actual enhancing of the columns 3 and 4 perks here. Very, very excited for this. I think this has been a much needed to make master raids worth pursuing outside of just getting triumphs and saying you did it, of course. Yeah, very excited to see how this plays out. Don't really have much thoughts beyond that. Cord, do you have anything?
No, I think obviously we had Chris and Vivian on our show last year, and that was one of our big kind of questions that we kind of presented to Chris, being the lead for the weapons team. And how, he was kind of surprised with how much we as a community have latched onto adept weapons. And, it's the typical thing with the player base for Destiny is if there's one thing that gives it just a slight advantage, we will, of course, go for it. And yes, for adept weapons that don't have access to being craftable, that don't have access to, or at least prior to Lightfall, they didn't have access to having enhanced perks. They did need a little bit of a help. But yeah, I share your sentiment with if it's going to have 2 weapons per, so column 3 and column 4, if you can enhance craft both of those, if that's going to be an option, I would probably say maybe not, because that would be a little bit, swings the opposite direction of this is now way too powerful. And we know from experience, we know from prior interviews that Bungie they don't want to give the sort of D1 style of your really great weapons will come from a raid, because not everyone will be able to do that. That's the inherent problem here. So while I do welcome these changes for the adept weapons, I just hope it's not the pendulum's not swung so far in the opposite direction here. But yeah, there's some nice changes here. Before we give our kind of final thoughts here, this is another change. This is their third category, and that is the weapon level boosting. So they're adding another avenue to increase a weapon's level without needing the weapon to be equipped. A new weapon mod will be added that will increase the level of a crafted or enhanced weapon for the cost of standard currencies. While this will not be initially positioned as the only method for leveling up a weapon, it may be a convenient method for unlocking early perk choices and an outlet for any spare currencies you have stockpiled. And they said this is coming sometime after Season 21, so not anytime soon, be halfway through the year of Lightfall. So I think, personally, for that final one with weapon level boosting, I think I still feel like they should do more kind of in-game events. So if it's, say, it's double XP for Vanguard ops, that your weapons have increased level boosting in those activities. I mean, to be honest, we did see that with the Dawning.
Yeah.
That was an event that if you were partaking in, was it pretty much, was it everywhere? Not everywhere, but was it the core playlists, or was it just...
So it was when you had snowballs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
It was wherever the snowballs were, which were the core playlists, and then I think it was also the Throne World had them as well, so that destination.
Yeah. So I personally would like to see more of that. And it, technically, I'll say I don't pretend to be a game dev here, so I'm not sure how they could expand that to be just during those events of, it's double XP for Crucible or it's double XP for Gambit, and have those areas of the game where you can rank up your weapon faster. That would be a very safe option to really help out with the weapon leveling process, because I think to link into my kind of not so much quite a smaller perspective opinion for this particular section compared to what I suspect you're going to talk about a lot more for weapon crafting, but that's my biggest complaint when it comes to weapon crafting, and it is the having to level it. So yes, you get your 5 red boxes after X amount of weeks. I know we're getting that particular part is getting kind of helped out, where we can now properly focus on a particular weapon. You can take your deep sight and shove it into this particular weapon you want to take in. Okay, that's great. But the actual leveling up a weapon is one that's... I have got really fatigued very quickly over the last, year of Witch Queen. Mm-hmm. do not pretend to be. I sit on the fence when it comes to the RNG side and the weapon crafting side. There's been a lot of commentary, especially in our Discord, when it comes to which side are you on. And I'll happily admit that I'm not on really any side, and that's probably the worst thing I could say. But I completely acknowledge that a lot of these weapon crafting changes, some of them are really good, but them shrinking the craftable loot pool to be, quite small. Seasonal weapons, and then just whatever the reprise weapons are after Season 21, that's quite disappointing. And I do feel, Impetus, we'll have your say in a moment here, but I know you're very pro weapon crafting, and to see the options shrink, whereas the options for the RNG weapons have only just went up. It's a pendulum here. It's like RNG weapons, or the weapons that you have to chase for RNG, have only just got greater now. It is disappointing, especially with the amount of changes they are doing here. It just seems a bit strange that they're putting a lot of effort into changing the crafting system overall, and then just saying, yeah, we're actually going to reduce the amount of weapons that you can craft. Just doesn't really... I personally don't like that change. In terms of everything else, it looks really promising. And, I suppose I am a little bit of I swing a little bit towards pro RNG, but like I said, these crafting changes are quite disappointing. I will let my co-host here go through his thoughts, because I know you've got a lot more to say.
I do. Some of my frustration, I'll say from the start here, has to come from I feel like I have more questions with what they've communicated than I have answers. As we have had this past year, the available craftable loot pools have been the Throne World Destination weapons. We've also gotten the raid weapons for Vow of the Disciple, and then later King's Fall. We've then had 4 seasonal weapons, plus some extra, some floaters that have loosely tied into seasons in some cases, so the Ikelos weapons, and then also the Menagerie weapons. It's not clear to me if the Ikelos weapons and the Menagerie weapons are considered seasonal because they have a narrative tie-in, because they share a theming with that season's story. I don't know if that means that if, say, for example, the Black Armory weapons come back in a future season, are those going to be considered seasonal weapons and therefore they'll be craftable? Or will they come back a second time and be random rolls again? I can't imagine the community would be thrilled to go and chase a Kindled Orchid with Killclip Rampage that they didn't get the first time, and then at some point, come the final shape, be deprived of that Kindled Orchid with Killclip Rampage a second time. That's going to sting all the more. So that's one question that I have, is where did those kinds of weapons fall? We had the Deers of Eternity weapons get added into the crafting pool. I think that was just, they were there. They were a fun set of weapons. Obviously the Anniversary Pack is still available for purchase, so I can understand why those weapons would be one to be craftable. That tied into the Epic Game Store release of Destiny 2 as well. That makes a lot of sense there. So if we do assume that those types of weapons, the seasonal adjacent weapons, would be added in, then the only loot pool that's been taken out will be the final shape destination weapons, whatever those will be, and then raid weapons. And I think, I was a little bit ambivalent about the raid weapons being craftable when the system was first announced with the Witch Queen. Looking back on it now, though, this does kind of hurt me to see that the raid weapons will no longer be craftable. I really do think that the Lightfall raid is the best implementation of the crafting system, where the base weapons are craftable for the players that are just getting into raiding, maybe are having to rely on LFG for most of their runs. They don't have a dedicated raid team. They're not in a clan, or their clan just isn't running enough frequently for them to really get together to square up for the master difficulty. I love that those weapons will, they'll be able to get a crafted version of that they'll have access to a raid weapons entire loot pool, Whereas the players that maybe are a little bit better, or at least have a dedicated raid team that can really put in the time to go chase the master version, the challenges, the triumphs, and then also the adept versions, will have an option there. They can go get the adept weapons. They will be able to enhance the perks, so there won't even be any possible doubt of power creep over these base raid craftable versions, right? The adepts will be superior in every possible way. They'll get the adept mods. They'll also have the option for enhanced perks. You can put mementos on them, right? There's no comparisons, no concerns here. The raid adepts will be superior. I think that is to me the ideal system. And I really wish that Bungie would have taken that and applied it for all the raids going forward, instead of depriving future raids of this base crafting system for players. Like, Bungie's really trying to push build crafting. They're trying to make significant changes to various systems across the board, not just to weapons, to let more players feel comfortable, feel like they can engage with build crafting. And that is weapon crafting. That is how we build craft with weapons to an extent, right? RNG weapon drops, they're not true build crafting because you're relying on luck. You got to work with what you got. But with crafting, you have access to a weapon's entire perk pool. You're able to grab a weapon, and then it's able to age in a way that a randomly rolled drop of that weapon won't, right? Let's pick a perk that's not going to be as strong next season. Adaptive munitions, right? This was a pretty hot perk when it first landed at the start of Witch Queen. It was very helpful for master content. I was picking up a lot of different roles with adaptive munitions. We were talking about it for GMs. It's not going to be that strong now that match game is disappearing. So what I've done is I've gone back to my crafted weapons with adaptive munitions, and I've changed that perk out. And for the randomly rolled weapons that had adaptive munitions, I've deleted them from my vault. I do not have an adaptive munitions weapon anymore. And that's an entire weapon that I don't, some cases they were just world drops, but in other cases I might have chased or grinded for a weapon looking for that specific perk. That's time that's just been completely wasted now. I've got nothing else to show for it unless I have a different random roll of that weapon. But in some cases, I only wanted the adaptive munitions roll. There were quite a few stasis primaries that we had with adaptive munitions. That was a big deal because stasis weapons could have that proc on all three shields, and we didn't have stasis shields, so that meant that every shield that you shot with a stasis weapon with adaptive munitions, the perk was proccing. That made it great. That's not going to work anymore. That doesn't have the same value to me because we're losing the match game modifier. So all these weapons that I was chasing that had adaptive munitions, I'm not interested in anymore. But the crafted weapons that had adaptive munitions, I've just shifted over to a different perk. I've put something else on there, a different damage perk, or maybe a different utility perk, depending on what column adaptive munitions appeared in. That's the value of the crafting system to me. And I know some people are going to respond with, well, Destiny is a looter shooter, and I would really push back on that now. These changes that we're getting come Lightfall, they don't speak to a looter shooter, they speak to the action MMORPG, and that has been one of those key marketing terms that have been very consistent for both Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 with how Bungie talks about the game. These changes, these increased systems of build crafting for the armor and mods and for weapons, these are all pointing towards more of an MMORPG system than just a typical looter shooter. And I understand that you might approach the game as a player with the perspective of a looter shooter. You might only play certain activities like a raid for these weapons for particular combos. But I would encourage you to think about some players that maybe don't see the game that way, because Bungie's been, for better or for worse, trying to encourage a lot of different player perspectives on the game. And they seem to be promoting that. Even their own developers seem to be promoting different viewpoints of the game, how to play the game, what to prioritize within the game. And I would say, yes, some of you might be really happy that the raids no longer have craftable options and now it's all random and you can just go farm a particular encounter to your heart's content or spend a bunch of spoils of conquest on a particular weapon to get the role that you want. Some of us, though, aren't interested in running 50 raids, especially if we haven't gotten the exotic weapon to drop from the raid. That to me is a big sticking point, is that part hasn't changed, and I can't quite understand why people want the exotic weapon drop applied to all possible weapons they're dropping from a raid, because some people have to wait an awfully long time to get an exotic weapon. I don't want to have to do 67 runs of a raid to get the exact perk combination that I want on a particular raid weapon. I'd much rather do 5 weekly ones getting a red border if my RNG is terrible, or less time with the changes that are coming in Lightfall or the Year of Lightfall to be able to go get the weapon so that I can then play with it in some other activity. That's the value of the system to me. I don't want to have to wait to play with the loot that I get. I want to actually shoot it a little bit quicker on, because that's what keeps me playing. It's not chasing the loot, it's playing with the loot. And I'm hurt that for raids in particular, an activity that have such a small play time, that they're just extending the grind out for players, they're extending the chase out for players, when what we really need, and I really hope Bungie would prioritize, is getting more people into those systems, more people into the activities, playing the raids, getting more people eventually into the master raids, so that we can get some truly excellent, top tier, higher difficulty versions of raids. That to me is the priority here. It's not grinding out weapons on the normal difficulty over and over again, week over week, month over month, season over season, chasing for one specific role and hoping that I get lucky, right? Because you don't ever earn randomly rolled weapons. You just get lucky. You're playing a slot machine over and over again. We do this for Artifice Armor in dungeons. We do this for dungeon weapons as well. I'm fine with the dungeons still having the randomly rolled drops, because those are, I think, activities designed to be farmed in a way. I don't necessarily care. I mean, I would be happy if dungeon weapons were craftable. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it, but I think that activity in particular, I'm okay with farming for rolls, because once you master the encounter, once you get the strats down, you can go quite quickly. But again, I'd be open to crafting. But for raids in particular, when you require a larger team, when you have more encounters, when there's a lot more going on, a lot more to be aware of, especially as our newer raids are getting more mechanically complex, yeah, I don't think we should be making a hold up or making a gatekeep on the weapon side. I think it should truly just be on the player side, with understanding how the raid works, surviving, and then of course beating either the whole raid or just a particular encounter to farm for a deep sight version of a raid weapon. Those are my thoughts on the system. I really love the weapon crafting system as a whole. I think it has improved the game. I know some people want to say that it's broken the game, and I would say again, I think it's broken it because of how you view the game as a looter shooter. But for someone who maybe thinks of the game more as a RPG MMO situation, I see this as a huge quality of life, and I'm always going to advocate for the crafting system. Yes, it does need to be refined. I'm very happy with all of these changes. It was far from perfect, and I think I'm really happy. I'm looking forward to these changes. I think this will put the weapon crafting system in a better place, but I just cannot believe at a time when a lot of the other areas of the game are pushing more player choice, more player opportunities to really play the game you want to play, the weapon crafting team is looking at their own system and saying, we need to scale back. We've done too good of a job. I sincerely just don't think that's possible to do. You should always be striving for more of this. We should have more crafting opportunities. If it requires weapons having maybe less spicy loot pools, I'd be okay with that, right? We get meta changes. Things will change. Some stuff will be really strong at launch and then fade out. Think of the Palmyra B, right? Everybody was rocking that for the Vow of the Disciple raid when it very first launched, and then the rocket launcher archetypes got split up, and now we don't use precision frames anymore because they deal less damage than all of the other archetypes, and we're all running other things. That's just the way of the game. And so crafting system lets you take a weapon like Palmyra and say, okay, well, maybe I can change perks, or maybe I just stick that in my vault and wait and see if precision rocket launchers get some tweak to make them a little bit more valuable in the future, right? It's insurance. It's a form of insurance, basically. You don't have to keep chasing things over and over again for no reason. You can take a weapon and say, okay, I'm going to put Frenzy on it for now, but maybe I'll change that out to Adrenaline Junkie, depending on a change, or, maybe I'll swap adaptive munitions for Kill Clip or something else like that. And I think that benefits both PvP players and PvE players. And it's shocking to me, again, that some people would say, no, I'd rather spend my time grinding out weapons, just grinding stuff over and over again, and hope that, when I get the role that I want, that's going to somehow validate all the time that I've spent chasing this one weapon. I don't see that as valuable at all. I don't see random rolls as validating the time I've spent acquiring them. Different strokes for different folks. I think that's just kind of how we have to acknowledge that people are going to look at the system differently. And I would really, again, want to ask Bungie, can we get some more communication on that? Where do you see the loot chase versus the weapon crafting chase? Because while these articles have given us a lot of information, I'm still coming away with a lot of questions about where they really stand on this, because ultimately they're not the ones that get to sit on the fence. It's perfectly fine if Cord is ambivalent towards team RNG or team weapon crafting, but Bungie needs to put their foot down at some point and say, okay, this is exactly what we want. These are the objectives that we want the weapon system weapon crafting system to strive for. And these are activities that are going to be a part of that system, and these are activities that need to stay outside of the weapon crafting system. That's my question for them is, can you please clarify here? Because this is going to change how I approach the game in the coming year of, what activities do I spend time grinding? What activities do I go in just to get a chance at a random roll or a crafting frame so that I can go spend time in other activities, playing the stuff that I want to play the way that I want to play. All right, I think those are all my thoughts. I'm not gonna keep us going too much longer there. I spent a lot of time talking here. Let's shall we get on to the ViDoc, Court?
Oh well, before we do,
okay,
I did want to jump in, not specifically with what you've been saying there. Very good points there. I think one of the big points that I never really thought about it was, perks get reduced effectiveness, and metas come and go, and that's the big bonus of having a crafting weapon is that you can go in, okay, frenzy's been nerfed down to 1%, let's just say. I can now swap that out for, kill clip or something else, I never really thought about it that way, so that has kind of opened my eyes in terms of the valueness of having weapon crafting, whereas if it was a weapon that is a little bit rare, it's got a different kind of perk pool, I need to go all the way back into some type of older content, and maybe people aren't that enthused of doing anymore, and I grind it out until I eventually get it after 50 runs, and yeah, that's not a big thing. I will say, just while you're talking about that there, have we had any news about what's happening to the Year of Witch Queen's craftable weapons?
Nope. I meant to talk about that and I didn't. No, we have not.
That's, yeah. I was looking over a script here and I was thinking, have they mentioned anything about what's happening? Because with this particular article, yes, it's got a lot of information and yeah, there's some positives and there's some negatives here. But the one thing they didn't mention was what's happening to our current craftable weapons. Are they just going to disappear, or is this going to be a side attachment to legacy focusing? But they never mentioned it back in that article a few weeks back. Yeah, that's the one big question mark. Yeah. For me particularly, it's just like, yeah, okay, we've got all our weapons crafted, and you can now craft all the seasonal stuff once per day up to Lightfall. If you've got the currency, go and do that. If you haven't already done that, Saints, of course, been putting out some great little graphics for recommended weapons that you can craft as our kind of hot picks. So go and do that. But it's for folks who have just got back into Destiny. They're missing out on, I don't know how many weapons we've been able to craft this year, 50 something
like that. Yeah,
that would have been great to get some sort of clarification of, yes, you'll still have an option to craft those, or no, but we hear you, we'll have that at some point. All right. Okay, well, that was weapon crafting. I know it's a very hot topic, so if you do want to reach out to the two of us here, but also Saint, reach us out onto our socials.
Yep, happy to talk about it.
Over on the Discord server, yeah. Lots of conversation, and of course be civil about it, regardless of whichever side you're on. Okay, right. We have a ViDoc, and we also have some media and articles, roundups to kind of cover before we do our kind of weapon breakdown here. So I'll kick us off here. Just say that kind of overview of Neomuna, our brand new location and patrol zone. And the big first point that I think it's not, well, it's been kind of spoke about and publicised, but Neomuna will have its own vault. At the initial landing zone, I should say, will have its own vault and postmaster vendors. Neomuna, the size of it is as big as Europa or Savathun's Throne World destination, so pretty sizable for a destination. Patrols will be accessed via the NPCs, the citizens, instead of beacons. A lot of combat zones of Neomuna takes place on rooftops and open streets. Lots of opportunities to utilise the grappling hook and Strand abilities. You'd be probably wondering, why are we up against the Vex? Well, they, quote, they discovered Neomuna ages ago, and the colony has been fighting them ever since. That's why the Cloud Striders were created in the first place, to lead the fight against the Vex. We will be fighting alongside the Cloud Striders and Kaito's army versus the forces of darkness. We'll also be seeing Callus and his loyalists making a reappearance in a big way. They're now called the Shadow Legion. They will have some powers granted to them by the Witness. We'll have some abilities that other Cabal do not possess. Some examples that were spoke about and we've seen on some of these media kind of posts is that they'll drop darkness turrets and shield generators, and they'll deploy from when you defeat the Cabal combatants. So a nice little overview of Neomuna. We've got Season 20, or that's Season of the Defiance, Impetus.
Yes, Season of the Defiance. This is Callus's loyalist forces are invading the EDZ. We will be defending Earth and the Last City, as the Darkness have shown up to attack us directly. We are seeing some Darkness structures that we previously saw on Europa and the Throne World also appear in the EDZ, so it looks like we're getting a bit of a destination refresh, maybe temporarily, but that'll be what we can expect next season. We have some new people showing up to the seasonal narrative, some old friends making a reappearance, some very old friends in some cases. So Petra, Mithrax, Crow, Amanda, and Devram are all going to be a part of the seasonal narrative. Very excited to have all those people here. That's going to be fun. We were also given a look at our ritual weapon. This will be Ecliptic Distaff, which is a Void Glaive, and it will have at least 2 new perks, Replenishing Aegis and Destabilizing Rounds, which we are guessing is probably going to be the new Volatile Weapon perk that will be appearing on Void Weapons starting next season. So very excited to have that. Got some images up of that as well. It looks pretty cool with the different ornaments on there, the seasonal ornaments. We were also given a little bit of a talk about the final shape and what comes after. Once again, confirming that the Light and Darkness saga will end with the final shape, which will also coincide with the 10-year anniversary of Destiny. But Destiny and its future is far from over after this storyline completes. So it's not over just yet. We've got one more confirmed expansion after Lightfall, and then it's one big question mark. But we will go on. So we, of course, also got a bunch of information regarding Strand, the abilities, the weapons, and the armor, as that's all coming next season. So we have seen some what appear to be Strand combatant shields. Very excited for that. I'm assuming Stasis will also have some shields for various combatants. That would make the most sense.
Hopefully,
since those don't currently exist, but maybe they just skip straight over Stasis. We'll see. We did also get, again, these are kind of the piece of information that we're pulling from have been stills from the ViDoc, as well as some information that we've seen, some promotional images, and then also stuff from various articles that went up shortly after the ViDoc went live. So in one image, we did see that Strand Tangles appear to have a cooldown. We don't know if it's the base cooldown, but the cooldown did mention 15 seconds, which is quite long here. Not sure if that'll be able to be modified in some way, but yeah, we could see that on a screen of one of the Guardians in the ViDoc, that they had just released a Strand Tangle, and then all of a sudden they were locked out for 15 seconds. Kind of bummed about that. That does seem quite long, but again, we don't quite sure of all the different things that Tangles can do, so it could be a balance issue there, but just something to be aware of. We also did get a glimpse of the anti-champion synergy for Strand. It does have 2 different champions synergies here. It will be barrier champions and unstoppable champions. We do finally know what specific options are available for each. For barrier champions, we will have unraveling rounds. We don't have anything specific to provide with this, but of course, plenty of things can unravel as an ability. So I imagine this will probably be a little bit similar to volatility versus volatile rounds. We'll have unravel as an ability, and then the unraveling rounds for barrier. So potentially a fragment that will apply unraveling rounds to Strand weapons for that sweet anti-barrier synergy. For unstoppable champions, we have the suspend verb that is going to stun an unstoppable champion. We do have a few options already that we know about this from the Strand ability article. So the shackle grenade will help with suspending. Hunters, you have the ensnaring slam aspect. That's the air move to slam downward and then suspend nearby enemies. That should work on unstoppable champions. Titans have the Blade Fury super heavy attack. The Dranger's Lash aspect, that's the class ability cast, sends forth a suspending ripple. And then, of course, the Abiant Leap exotic armor as well. That's going to send out an additional suspending ripple from your barricade when you cast it there. Warlocks, we have the Mindspun Invocation. So we can consume the Shackle Grenade to grant the Warlock to cause a suspending detonation on every kill. That'll probably help with, at least to help deal with Unstoppables at range there, so that'll be quite nice. Again, there will also be fragments that help with this as well, but that is all that we know as well. We did get a little bit of a glimpse of some already announced exotic weapons and then potentially exotic strand armor as well, plus some new stuff. We did see a Stasis exotic bow. This is the Verglass Curve. That was glimpsed there. And then what appears to be another exotic helmet for Titans. Had a very distinct design. I believe it was the Clovis Bray symbol could be seen on it as well. Could be exotic, could be an ornament. We weren't entirely sure, but it had a very distinct look that is kind of quite typical of exotics. So could be another Titan helmet there coming for you guys. And then, of course, our weapons. We did have quite a few images here, but they showed off quite a few of the seasonal weapons as well, the Defiance weapons. So we did get to see some images for that. We did see images of strand weaponry. We knew these were coming in, but we did get to see some specifics here. So we got a hand cannon, an SMG, machine gun, and a sniper rifle. We did see footage of a Waveframe Stasis heavy grenade launcher as well. That'll be a new archetype there, a Waveframe heavy. Quite interesting. Can't wait to play with that. We did see the Volt Shot perk on a special arc grenade launcher. Very excited to play with that. We did get a Solar Sword. I know that's one of kind of the big gaps here. The last Solar Sword we got would have been Solar Scar, and that's no longer obtainable. We are getting a new one. It does come with Incandescent. Very excited for that. Maybe we did see a Stasis Sword. That one's still kind of up in the air. Probably have to go back and look at a few images here. There wasn't a loadout image because that's where we saw a lot of these weapons, but it looked like there may have been a sword that was dealing stasis damage. We shall see. We did get a few images with some descriptions here of origin traits and then perks. So we have the destination weapons for Neomuna will come with the Nanotech Tracer Rockets origin trait. Potentially some synergy or some copying from a certain exotic weapon that Court may or may not be a huge fan of. We shall see. We shall see. Quicksilver Storm may be sharing its power with a few Neomuna weapons. That would be quite cool if it did. We did also see some new perks as well. Again, no descriptions of these, just the names. We saw Hatchling, which potentially could be a strand-related weapon perk pertaining to Threadlings. Destabilizing rounds, we already mentioned those. That's probably going to be the volatile round perk there for void weapons. And then Envious Assassin. No idea what that does there. All right, Court, you want to talk about our new enemy that we get to go face off against, aside from the Vex and the Cabal next season?
Yes, it's the Tormentors, so that will be your kind of same kind of vein as Champions and Lucent Hive. Probably more of a high-tier threat is what they called it anyway. Or a lot of the sort of articles and media outlets were calling this high-tier threats. They did mention that there will be different tiers of Tormentors. So some can be frozen by stasis, and some are much more powerful and can shrug the stasis off. So I'm thinking more of a kind of, so mini bosses can be frozen, and boss type combatants cannot. They'll just automatically break out. So yeah, we'll see different tiers of Tormentors. They haven't really given us a lot of kind of in-game. It's been a lot of kind of cutscene-y kind of type of media. We haven't seen any specifically in the game, and a lot of media outlets haven't really kind of clarified. So I think they want to keep Tormentors be more kind of we get to experience them and see how we kind of perform. But they did say that they have command over void energy, and they can grab guardians and perform dark harvest. So they will physically grab you I'm assuming if you're a little bit too close for comfort, bring you up and just start siphoning off and presumably some ability energies, health. Again, none of that's been fully explained, but looking forward to a brand new type of enemy to bully with their various elemental keywords like incandescent and hatchlings, destabling rounds, all that. So
bully and get bullied.
Yes. Little note here about commendations and Guardian ranks. So, of course, you can commend your fellow Fireteam Guardians. And it looks like, pity Saint wasn't here, but it looks like you'll be able to see a full results screen for the end of a raid, because there is a particular image of fellow Guardians commending each other. But there is a tab for what appears, we don't know what's in that tab, but it does say full results. So who knows what that means? But if it is what we think it is, that is great, because we've been asking for some sort of full results screen for raids for a long time. Some end of activity stats would be great, but again, we don't know that. Speaking of Guardian ranks, we've got a lot more information. So Guardian ranks will have challenges to progress through each of the Guardian ranks. Kind of think of your current seasonal challenges. For every sort of week, we get some batch of season challenges to increase your rank. It's going to be the same here. As we've mentioned at the start of this episode, so the number next to your name in-game is your Guardian rank, rather than whatever your seasonal rank is. They did say, so Guardian ranks 1 to 6 are your sort of standard, that's your base ranks. And for new lights, you'll obviously go through those 1 to 6. If you're an established player, you'll generally always start about rank 7. And 7 to 11 ranks are the temporary. It'll reset every season. So if you're an established player, like ourselves here, you'll always start at rank 7. If you're brand new to Destiny, or if you've done a lot of kind of Destiny, but you've maybe not done a lot of raids, I think the assumption here is that you'll maybe start at rank 5 or 6, and you'll need to tick those off to eventually increase your rank. But that was a nice little kind of insight to that particular section for Guardian ranks. All right, we've got loadouts and customizations. Got some images up on our script here. Some nice UI here, really kind of fleshed out the system. We've seen a lot of mods as well. We'll start us off here with loadouts. Been a lot of kind of information that's been thrown out. So they can be changed anywhere and on the fly. So, for example, if you're in the middle of a strike, in the middle of Crucible, if you're in between encounters and raids, dungeons, etc., etc., the only exclusion here are activities with locked loadouts. That's that particular modifier. Otherwise, you'll be able to swap whenever you want. I think that was the big kind of question mark way back when we knew the loadout system was being released for this for Lightfall. Was how will this compete against DIM? We know a lot more. From prior articles that this only applies to armor, mods, and weapons. Though, as we know, they are open to include finishers, ghosts, and etc. for any potential future updates. We did also get some clarification that the loadout system, Bungie did confirm that this will be able to pull items from the vaults, but not place gear back into the vaults. They are looking possibly for a future update, if this becomes a bit of an inconvenience, to maybe flesh that out a little bit further. So the way I'm thinking here is use your in-game for on-the-fly loadout swaps. So again, between raid encounters, and DIM for moving stuff back into the vault, or sort of general gear maintenance. That's the kind of vibe here. You got any thoughts there for the loadouts?
Yeah, I mean, anywhere and on the fly are like really the only terms that I care about. I mean, obviously, being able to pull stuff in is huge here, and not being able to place gear back is really a minor inconvenience in the face of being able to change stuff anywhere and on the fly. I mean, that's huge. That's going to make raids and dungeons so much easier. I don't really have to prep before I go into the raid, as in the same extent that I do right now. So that's going to be huge. I'll absolutely be making use of the loadout system here. Great change. If eventually we do get to be able to put the gear back into the vault, that's fine. I'll still be using dim just to keep extra loadouts that won't be available in game, because we have a set number of those in game. So I do love to make fun builds to play around with, kind of later in the season after I've gotten everything else done. So I'll just store those on dim. But yeah, it looks like for the actual, while I'm playing the game, I won't even need to get out of the game. I'll just be able to pull all my weapons to me, and once I hit max stacks, maybe I'll boot up dim to send one back, but that could be changed in the future, in which case, great.
Yeah, I think dim's obviously going to be a very helpful kind of backup here, but I think from the footage, again, maybe not take a pinch of salt when you watch kind of footage from sort of pre-release, but when they clicked on a loadout, your armor, your weapons were all swapped out in like a second. And now obviously dim is working behind the scenes. It's a third-party app. It's not official. And it does take a little bit of time. I think over the last couple of months, dim's been getting progressively slower and slower, whether that's related to the game or it's just, there's a lot of things happening. I don't pretend to be a third-party app developer, but that's one thing that's kind of started to grind my gears particularly. No fault to dim. I love dim. Dim's such a great, valuable asset for your Destiny experience, but not being able to change in-game, which is on purpose, that's not something that the dim can actually allow you to do if you're in a ongoing activity, but also just the speed of swapping between loadouts, and it can take. I'll get up, go downstairs, give Jasper some pets, some food, and I'll come back, and it's still waiting to shift some mods over, and it gets a little bit of a pain, especially when time is of the essence when it comes to Destiny. But at least from the pre-launch footage, it looks like it's pretty instantaneous, but we'll see. And yeah, dim's still going to be a valuable kind of backup here. All right, I'll pass you back to Impetus. Going to talk about the armor charge system. We saw a lot more of that.
We did. So we got a few more details, and then also, of course, plenty of images of various mods. Now, Bungie did say that they were going to reduce the mod costs across the board here, and looking at the images that we found, it looks like the highest cost that I can see is a charge of 4 energy. So I've yet to see an armor mod that costs 5 or higher, so I imagine that the 5 all the way up to, 7 that we had available for heavy-handed or something like that. Those seem to be well and truly gone. And of course, this will also apply to the artifact mods as well. So very excited to see that. Lots of 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, which is fine. Makes build crafting so much easier. So let's get a quick refresher on the armor charge system. So collecting an orb of power causes you to gain 1 temporary armor charge. The armor charge mods are split into 3 categories. These are color coded. The blue armor charge mods have decaying effects. The yellow armor charge mods have consumable effects. And the green armor charge mods have enhanced/passive effects. And in the one image that we have in our script here, it looks like it's the green mod, the enhanced/passive effect, that is the 4 energy cost, whereas the blue ones all appear to be 3. So it probably makes sense. Of course, passive effects are generally pretty helpful to have, so it makes sense to make them more expensive.
That particular one, which is part of our script here as well, but that one's stacks and stacks, which is picking up an orb of power grants you 1 additional stack of armor charge.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that does warrant that 4 cost.
Good to know there. So blue, yellow, green. Blue is decaying, yellow is consumable, and green is enhanced/passive effects. We are just going to quickly talk about a few of the armor charge mods that we could see in the footage here. We did get a quick glimpse of some various font of and then again, this varies. It could be agility, vigor. These pertain to stats here. So agility refers to mobility, vigor refers to strength. These are blue mods. You will gain a bonus to this particular stat. While you have any armor charge, the armor charge will decay over time immediately after getting this mod applied. It can be stacked to increase the potency of its effect. There are diminishing returns for each additional copy. Okay, a temporary way to get an extra stat. Interesting choice of mods. We'll see how that plays out. I can't really think of a super helpful use case for that, but that will now be an option there. Those are blue mods. We do have the Kickstart mods here for melee, grenade, and utility. These are yellow mods. When your various ability energy is fully expended, you will gain said ability energy. Additionally, your armor charge is consumed, and you gain additional ability energy for each stack. You can stack these mods to increase the potency of its effect, but there will be diminishing returns for each additional copy. This is interesting to me. My question, again, for Bungie is, are you tweaking the current interaction between Kickstart mods and abilities with multiple charges where you can't fully expend your ability energy unless you use up all of the charges for that ability to proc Kickstart? That could be problematic for Warlocks and Titans who have melees with 3 charges, right? That would effectively rule out melee Kickstart for anyone wanting to play Strand, Warlock, or Titan and trying to use that Kickstart mod if that interaction is still going to carry on over to Lightfall. But hopefully that's not the case. They are tweaking that current interaction because we haven't seen, Firepower. We don't think Firepower is sticking around, so it looks like the Kickstart mods are the only source of ability energy once you fully expended. So again, we'll see. Go on.
Yeah, I think those type of mods have been rolled into Kickstart because Kickstart had that when your X energy is fully expended, you gain X energy back, and then that was it. But it's got an additional here if your armor charge is consumed. You also gain additional X energy for each stack. So I think that's where we haven't seen it. So we can't necessarily 100% rule it out. I know Saint could because he did have a little brief look into these particular systems, but he's not here to tease us. But I think those type of mods, they were very powerful. I know over on the PvP side, there's various other mods like Radiant Light and Powerful Friends. We haven't seen those either. But again, I think those have been rolled into whether that's Font of X or some other mod. But yeah, again, when we spoke about this during our mods breakdown episode a few weeks back, we were kind of giving that temper your expectations. You're going to miss a few mods here. And yeah, I think it's going to be stuff like Firepower that's been getting consumed, broke apart, and shoved into Kickstart.
Yeah. We did mention Stacks on Stacks already. That's going to be a green mod. Picking up an Orb of Power, it grants you 1 additional stack of armor charge. That's a 4 cost right there. Charged Up, this will cost 3. This increases the maximum number of stacks of armor charge you can carry by 1, multiple copies of this mod stack, and improve its effects. And then the final one that we got to see was tied to various elements. These are the Element Weapon Surge. These are blue mods. They cost 3 energy. Your elemental weapons gain a small bonus to damage while you have any armor charge. Your armor charge now decays over time. You can stack these to increase the potency of the effect, but there are diminishing returns for each additional copy.
So that one would be your Font of Might.
Yeah.
Again, we haven't seen Font of Might, but I think it's reasonably the assumption is reasonable to make here that this X weapon surge is what Font of Might was. We were talking about this in the Discord server in the Patrons Lounge. It's like, what's the diminishing values here? Is it going to start at 10%, then go down to 16%, and then we know it was around about 22%. We knew that from a previous article, and you can obviously only really have up to 3 mods to give you that. But yeah, very nice to see. We did see Kinetic, Arc Solar stasis, void, and strand is there. There's also another one. It's like a little kind of like a little harmony symbol. It's the blob into the other blob, if you know what I'm saying. If you look at the script here, it's like a circle but split up. It's I can't remember the actual name for that symbol. It's like one of those Korean symbols.
Oh, yin and yang or something like that?
Yes, yeah, yin and yang.
What is that? Interesting.
Yeah, so that may be a kind of harmony kind of type, where whether it buffs another type of element instead of the one you've got, or if it's all 5, I guess we'll have. No, sorry, all 6.
Is that for like if you're matching your subclass to your weapons, then it reloads?
It could be that as well, yeah.
Okay.
But it's a brand new symbol. We haven't seen that before.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting one to find out.
Wait and see.
A lower potency, yeah.
Last thing I'll say here before we get into the Foundry weapons, Bungie said they are open to implementing more armor mods in the future, although the artifact perks will still feature different seasonal twists and focuses on different weapons and abilities. So I imagine we'll see a lot of experimentation there, and then popular ones might eventually show up down the line as an armor mod. One quick note, of course, Artifice Armor. What's happening there? So they will give an additional mod slot, which will provide a small stat bonus to any given stat, any chosen stat, +3. We now have learned that the cost of that is going to be 0 energy to slot in. So it is truly a free additional mod slot where you can select a +3 to assign to any one of your stats. So Artifice Armor is still incredibly meta for PvP and PvE. We've already passed the point in time for this current season to farm for Artifice Armor. We're not going to get that back before Lightfall, but the next time you are able to go into a Master Dungeon next season, you should absolutely go and farm out Artifice Armor, especially on Keitel. They are going to be very, very powerful for the endgame of PvP and PvE moving forward.
Or if you want to try and farm Master Spire.
Or if you have 3 well warlocks.
But we don't recommend that because it's not fun.
No, it's not. No, it is not. Okay, that's all of our news. We're done for news. We got to take a break. We're calling it quits now. Yep. We are going to jump into the Foundry weapons, do a quick little breakdown for you guys. These 4 weapons dropped this season. They are in the World Loot Pool. They are not craftable. I'm going to start with our Suros and our Amalon weapons, and then Core will follow up with the final 2, Feist and Hakke. So let's start with the Arvindil FR6. This is a stasis high impact frame fusion rifle. This has the high impact frame bonus, which is a -20 to your accuracy cone size and -17 accuracy cone growth while you are moving less than 2.8 meters per second. So move slow, hit your shots. That is the buff there. This does come with the Omalon Fluid Dynamics origin trait. That will increase your reload speed and stability at the top half of your magazine, which means you are getting 20 stability and 30 reload speed at the very top full magazine, and then it gradually decreases onto 50% of your magazine. As is the case for a lot of World Loot weapons, these stats are not very competitive here. I will say, though, this is the only high-impact fusion rifle in the kinetic slot for now. But stat-wise, we are really suffering here for the Arvindil. 47 range is the second lowest of the high-impact family. Stability of 24, second lowest again. Handling of 18 is the lowest of the high-impact fusion rifle family. And the reload speed of 18 is middling, so by no means a stat monster, but again, it's unique to the kinetic slot for now, and it does have some pretty interesting PvE perks. For barrels and magazine, I am looking at stability and handling. Barrels, it is going to be fluted barrel all the way. Maybe polygonal if you are having trouble controlling your shots here, but I think, with the high impact frame, you can kind of work with that bonus there. Should feel pretty solid, but very slow to shoot. Magazine size, I'm going to go enhanced battery, get myself an extra shot. If you've looked at the perk pool on this gun, you probably know where I'm going with that. But yes, having a +1 to the magazine size is going to be nice here. Moving on to column 3, we do have one very, very unique perk showing up here. Reconstruction finally appearing outside of the raid. We already talked about the dungeon weapons from Spire that could also roll Reconstruction, but this is now fully out of the raid and dungeon loot pool and into the world loot pool, showing up on a world drop weapon here. Reconstruction, yep. You do also have a few other pretty decent PvE options as well. Again, you have no way to really get this. I mean, I guess you could focus for it at the helm for 1 week until that vendor option disappears. That was Season of the Plunder vendor has the option to focus different vendor engrams. So maybe if you save up all your onboard engrams before they too disappear, you can try and get lucky. But besides Reconstruction, you do have Stats for All, great perk. Subsistence, also quite nice. And Slideways for quickly reloading the weapon without actually having to take advantage or have to suffer through that 18 reload speed, depending on how you look at it there. But again, I think a lot of people are going to look at Reconstruction. That's definitely the flashy new perk here. Looking at column 4, we do have Chill Clip. That's probably what everyone's going to be gravitating towards. This is a stasis weapon, so of course it's getting Chill Clip. And yes, Chill Clip, of course, is going to be very strong next season when it gives the anti-overload champion capability with slow. That will be intrinsic to the slow verb there. So Reconstruction Chill Clip is what a lot of players have been looking at. We do have a couple other damage perks that are going to be nice here. You got Golden Tricorn. You got One for All, so you could do the stats One for All combo there. That could be quite decent if you get that to drop. Subsistence Chill Clip would be just fine too. I've gotten one of those to drop for me. You know, it's not going to give me as many Chill Clip shots as a Reconstruction Chill Clip will, but it does give me quite a few back-to-back, which is always nice. Golden Tricorn on a stasis weapon is pretty tough to pull off. Stasis abilities are just not quite as lethal as the light-based abilities, so getting to that ×2 of Golden Tricorn is a little difficult. You typically have to whittle an enemy down, especially in higher-end PvE content, and then finish them off with a melee, a stasis melee, as the grenades don't typically do a lot of damage on their own. So I don't typically recommend Golden Tricorn. It's not really a perk that I look for on stasis weapons, but you could, of course, take advantage of that. That plus 50 to your damage is going to be quite strong on a high-impact fusion rifle, if you want to go that route. But yeah, the tried and true is going to be Reconstruction and Chill Clip. That is going to give you a lot of different Chill Clip shots to fire off one after the other. Granted, it's going to be quite slow. That charge time is 960. It's a high impact, so it will take a while to fire them all off, but you are going to be freezing enemies, so they won't be able to shoot you back, which means you'll have plenty of time to go through all those shots. So that is going to be the recommended roll there. Reconstruction Chill Clip with Fluted Barrel, Enhanced Battery. Masterwork there. I mean, goodness sakes, so many of these stats are so low, it's like you can't go wrong. You could do charge time, reload speed, handling, pretty much everything but range. Any of those are going to be great there as well. So that is what I will recommend. And then, of course, minor or major spec for extra damage to enemies. All right, moving on to Fioratura 59. This is our Suros Void Rapid Fire Frame Sidearm. Suros Synergy is our origin trait here. Reloading grants bonus handling and reduces incoming flinch for a short time. That's 36 handling and 20% flinch resistance for 6 seconds. Rapid fire frame bonus there is a 0.8 times reload speed multiplier if your magazine is empty plus the deeper ammo reserves. But that doesn't matter on a primary weapon when you have infinite ammo. So again, statistically, actually this one is a bit of an outlier. Stats tend to be on the higher side for the Suros rapid fire family here. There are 4 options in that subfamily. Range of 22 is going to be second highest. Stability of 63 is tied for the highest. Handling of 53, second highest. And reload speed of 42 is going to be second highest. So statistically, it's pretty competitive. And it does actually have some pretty strong PvE perks to boot, which is nice, but it is still ultimately a sidearm. So on the barrel side here, again, the range band on a sidearm is pretty heavily compressed to the point where it's not worth speccing into it, definitely from a PvE point of view, but from also arguably from a PvP point of view here. What I'm looking for really is just trying to control those shots, make sure I can land as many crits as possible. Small bore, fluted barrel. If you're really struggling with the stability, you could lean all the way into polygonal. You're looking at a 95 recoil direction, so we can ignore arrowhead brake and chambered compensator. I don't think those are going to be necessary. It's going to be pretty much up and down, but it will be going up and down as a rapid fire sidearm. So try and control it as best you can. In the magazine section, column 2 here, we do have the 3 rounds perks. That's armor piercing, high caliber, and ricochet. I think any of those would be fine. If you need a little bit more stability, flared magwell could also get you there if you want just a small stability bump. If you want more bullets, I mean, ultimately the thing with sidearms, of course, is you're just going to be reloading a lot. So having a magazine perk like extended mag or appended mag, which do show up, it could be nice, but you just kind of have to accept the fact that you're going to run out of bullets quick, no matter how many you have. They just fire that fast. So column 3 here, we do have Threat Detector, great sidearm perk, and Pugilist, also really great sidearm perk. You're going to be proccing both of those, or you should be proccing both of those quite frequently, given the range that you're going to be engaging enemies with a sidearm. Column 4, this is where things kind of really take a turn here, for the better. We've got Repulsor Brace, great Void option here. Defeating a Void debuff target, granting that 45 HP overshield for 8 seconds. You know, if you can swing it, that would be quite strong here. I think the way that a lot of people try to proc Repulsor Brace is to modify their Void grenades so that they weaken enemies with their fragment. Is that undermining? I can't remember the name of that fragment there. Echo of undermining? Maybe. Court, do you remember what the name of the fragment for Void grenades apply weaken to enemies? Is it undermining?
Yeah, it's undermining.
Great. Yep. Well, typically what a lot of players do, put that fragment on to make their Void grenades weaken, throw that at an enemy, and then defeat them with their weapons to get that easy Repulsor Brace proccing. You could still do that with Fioratura. Again, you're probably going to be throwing a grenade pretty close to you. Not that most of them deal damage, but that is something you got to be aware of course, is do you throw a grenade at your feet and then try to kill them with a sidearm? That's probably not going to be a very viable option for a lot of players, but if you want to proc Repulsor Brace, you are more than welcome to do that there. We've got Swashbuckler, again, great sidearm perk. That's going to tie in with both Pugilist and Threat Detector in column 3. That's a great synergy right there. Kill Clip, you could also do that. You will be reloading a lot. That'll be quite nice as well. With Threat Detector proc, that could make for some faster reload speeds as well to get to that perk proc quicker. And then you also got Golden Tricorn, which is a little bit funny to have that on a sidearm, but hey, that plus or that 50% damage increase for 10 seconds is going to be really strong. So is it strong enough to make sidearms viable in in-game PvE? Not in my book, but you know, if you want to try that out, you are welcome to try it out. I will not stop you. So for the overshield build here, I would say Threat Detector, Repulsor Brace is going to be kind of the perk combo to look for. If you want to lean into a melee build for a Void subclass for some synergy there, Pugilist Swashbuckler also exists. I will also bring up, though, that if you're going to go the Pugilist Swashbuckler route and you don't really care about what element the sidearm has to be, Brigand's Law also rolls this perk combo, and it does have an origin trait, Right Hook, that ties into melee a little bit more than Suro Synergy does. So I'd probably push you in that direction if the element of the gun does not matter. But if you do want to be on a Void subclass and you're absolutely looking for a Pugilist Swash Void weapon, Fioratura is here for you. All right, I'll pass you off to Court for the last 2 weapons here.
Yes, next up is very fun to say is Jararaka 3SR. Is your Stasis Rapid Fire Scout Rifle. That's 260 RPM. The frame bonus is it's full auto. It's a bit redundant now that we've got that option, but if you have the option turned off, you just want it specifically for rapid fire type of weapons, and it's still there. Another redundant perk here is deeper ammo reserves. It's infinite ammo, it doesn't really matter, and slightly faster reload when magazine is empty, and that's a 20% duration when your mag is empty. Origin trait here is Viced Stinger. So damaging an enemy with this weapon has a small chance to reload the magazine and increase movement speed while ADS. Hits have a chance to activate Viced Stinger for 7 seconds, which grants different bonuses based on the weapon archetype. It's 100% reload when Viced Stinger kicks in, but this is being reduced to 25% in Lightfall. A bit of a shame, especially for other type of weapons, especially when it comes to a scout rifle. 25% is kind of it's a bit sad for considering it's getting the knockback from Vice Stinger LFRs. But you do get that minus 5% reduced ADS movement penalty as well. The Vice Stinger activation chance for Scout Rifles is either 2 or 4%, and you incur a 4-second cooldown between activations. So a bit of a unique one here. It is a stasis rapid fire. We haven't got a direct same element competitor, so we'll compare it with Trustee, which is your solar deep zone crypt, and you can obviously craft it and has enhanced perks. And you've also got the Trials of Osiris, Aisha's Embrace, which is void, and it has an adept variant. Servant Leader is also present. If you want to make a comparison here, that is kinetic, so while we can compare it, do remember it gets a much larger damage bonus versus unshielded combatants in Lightfall. That will be 10%, as opposed to, well, Stasis is getting knocked back down to have no damage bonus against unshielded combatants, but hopefully we'll get to see maybe some Stasis shields out there. As Impetus said at the start of this weapons breakdown, it is a world loot drop, so its weapon stats are a bit quite poor, to be honest. So Jara gets bested in all stats by both Aisha's and Trustee, other than having a better zoom than Trustee and a slightly better recoil direction than Aisha's. Versus Servant Leader, it's a little bit better, Jara having a +1 stability and handling and a +3 recoil direction. So it's low down there with the stats, but let's see if we can look at the barrels and the perks to see if it has some sort of redemption. For the barrels, probably have to go for Arrowhead Break just to get that recoil direction really tightened up. For magazine, you do have a few options here. Ricochet for that +5 range and +10 stability. High Caliber for the +5 range, and for potential stun lock for low and mid-tier miners. Or if you want to go down the route of slightly better stability but +15 reload, it's Flared Magwill. Probably not necessary, especially with this being a rad fire. You'll get that speedy reload when you exhaust your magazine. For the main perks, we've got a few options here. Perpetual Motion's there. It's a really solid kind of mobile perk. Rapid Hit is here. 4 times the Charm is also here. Column 4, we've got Headstone. That's your typical stasis perk here. Golden Tricorn is also here. And Focus Fury. Now, I'll talk about that in a second here. For the Masterwork stability, especially if you're on console, though PC players, you can benefit from just really tightening up the stability. Otherwise, you do range if you can hold that stability. Weapon mods, it just has to be minor spec really, just to give you that damage bonus. And much like what Impetus was talking about with the Stasis Fusion Rifle, Golden Tricorn is here. Which is my sort of primary build here is going to be the Stasis Energy. So really your third perk is a free choice. I think Rapid Hit's always really a classic choice when it comes to Scout Rifles. Just really maximize out that reload, but you could go Perpetual Motion as well. So Golden Tricorn, still one of the best damage dealing perks, 50% once you get to that 2-time stack after a grenade or a powered melee kill, and that 1-time stack that provides 15%. Just mentioned there, Stasis has a smaller selection of abilities, not that offensive compared to its light counterparts, but you can still utilize things like Glacial Grenade, Withering Blade, Penumbral Blast, and Shattering Strike. They all have the potential to give you that 50%, 5-0 tier at 2 stacks. You could go for the wildcard build here, but I'm going to recommend this for our next weapon, and that's your 4 times the Charm and Focused Fury. A little bit tricky to have to kind of exploit on a Scout Rifle, especially rapid fire. Your shots are eventually going to start missing unless you can really focus on that. So it's not for the faint-hearted, but the option is there if you do get a roll and you just want to kind of go down that route, but I think the stasis synergy, with this being the sort of first scout rifle for... I don't recall golden tricorns rolled on any other scout rifles, if you want to correct me there. But I had a quick check. Doesn't look like it. But yeah, this is our first golden tricorn for any scout rifle. Next up is the Lord RokD. And again, this is a world loot drop. It's not craftable. It is the kinetic high impact auto rifle. It's the 360 RPM. The frame bonus is slow firing, high damage. The weapon is more accurate when stationary, moving slowly, and aiming down sights. That's minus 20% accuracy cone size, and minus 17% accuracy cone growth while moving less than 2.8 meters per second. The origin trait, which is something I'm well educated in, is Hakke breach armaments. So that's 15% increased damage versus vehicles, which includes tanks and combatant single-seaters, 30% increased damage versus turrets, 45% versus stasis crystals, and 49.5% against Vex, Cyclops, and Hive Streakers. For more info and details, you can take a look at my Hakke breach armaments breakdown from a few months ago. It's still relevant. Just been a few changes to the damage numbers, but the actual core of how Hakke breach armaments affects what type of vehicles is still the same. So this is another one where it's kind of not a lot of comparisons here. It's same element competitor, False Promises. That's quite an older weapon at this point. It's pretty old weapon perks. And then we've got Herod C, is its same Foundry, but it's a stasis variant, which is also from Gambit. And it does have that 12 by 12 perk pool. So it's... For range, 78, pretty standard for a high-impact AR, but the Herod does just get ahead of with 79. It has the best stability at 35, the best handling at 36. It's got the worst reload at 31, second best for aim assistance, joint second for zoom. I believe it's False Promises that gets the better zoom. Yeah, it does. Recoil direction is 88, which is actually the best. It's really good, especially against Herod, which is 76. So really strong recoil, especially with this being a high impact. You will be hitting your shots, which is maybe why you'll be wondering, yeah, maybe that's why I'm recommending fourth time's charm plus focus fury for this particular weapon. But it doesn't have that. It's got something else, which I'll talk about. So yeah, Herod has a huge selection of perks. You can obviously still kind of chase it. You can focus it as well. You can have that multi-perks and the Gambit origin trait, but Lord Brock is a much more refined choice. So for barrels and magazines, we've got small bore for that +7 stability and range. For magazine, we've got extended mag if you're going to pair it with 4 times the charm and a perk I'll talk about in a second. Otherwise, high cal or ricochet. Armor piercing, it's at 5% against any combatant shield. It does work against barrier champions if you want to go down that route, which is another build I'll talk about. For the main perks, we've got Demolitionist, we've got Perpetual Motion, we've got Osmosis, which are very kind of rare to find. We've got 4 times the charm. We also have DSR, Dynamic Sway Reduction, if you want to take that for if you're a console player. But again, this is quite a steady auto rifle at the best of times. And the worst of times. For column 4, it's only 2 choices here that I saw, and that's Adrenaline Junkie and Target Lock. Masterwork, range, otherwise stability. If you really need it, you shouldn't. And for weapon mod, you've got minor spec. So our first, I'll take our second build first, and that's your 4th times the charm plus Target Lock. So this is a kind of another wild card, similar to Jaraka, though this is a lot more feasible and viable due to it being a high impact AR. and you'll have a lot more forgiveness to land crits. We won't go into too much detail with how target lock works here, as we already did a few episodes ago. Saint did a sort of big breakdown for that particular perk. But you can also search for RokDC's Reddit breakdown for all that information and details when it comes to target lock. But basically, target lock's kind of escalating damage buff as long as you keep hitting the longer you're staying on the target. And that's why 4th time's the charm is a really great combination here. And pairing it with this Lodbrok, I know it's actually really, this particular synergy is pretty good in Crucible, but it's also good in PvE as well. For our second build, and that is the grenade synergy. I know, Impetus, we were talking about this just before we started recording, and that is Osmosis and Adrenaline Junkie. So reminder, in Lightfall, volatile rounds and unraveling rounds will be able to stun barrier champions. We aren't sure how to get unraveling rounds just yet, but volatile rounds will likely be the better synergy when you can combine it with Echo of Instability. That's grenade kills give volatile rounds. Osmosis, so when you use your grenade, your Lodbrok turns from kinetic into void, and that is a hard swap. There's no deviation here. It is literally using void element. There's not any shenanigans happening behind the scenes. So you can utilize that for volatile rounds. And then obviously Adrenaline Junkie, if you get some kills with Adrenaline Junkie, you get that 33 and 33.3% increased damage. And also some handling for 4.5 seconds. And then if you pair that with Devour, if you've got Devour active, you can have the grenade energy returns as well. So it's a nice little synergy there. High impacts can be a little bit of a, it's kind of a, you either really love high impacts or you just hate them. Depending on what the perks situation is, I'm kind of in the latter camp. I'm not a big fan of high impacts, but the Osmosis and Adrenaline Junkie, and then pairing that in a nice little loop with your Void synergy, especially for next season for Barrier Champions, would be something I'm pretty interested in. So I'll try and get those Lodbroks to drop between now and Lightfall and hopefully next season as well. But, I keep getting Fragile Focus and Wellspring, which is on this. But nice little synergy there. Please consider that for next season, especially with a lot of synergy we have against champions. All right, that's our four Foundry weapons. We'll of course have more next season. Maybe break it down a few weeks into the season rather than the end of the season, but who knows? We do have quite a lot to discuss.
We've got a lot to discuss.
Yes. Any more final thoughts there, Impetus, for the weapons or anything else?
No, they're world weapons. That's pretty much all I have to say for
They exist.
They are definitely weapons that exist. I mean, I will say this for the articles and all the information. I really am so happy that we've gotten this amount. It's definitely nice to have stuff that was spaced out several weeks in advance, and we weren't all just had stuff dumped on us the final 2 weeks, as it kind of felt with the Witch Queen heading in there. But this has been really great. Love getting to see all the different teams talk about what they've been working on, because they've been working on a lot of different stuff, and they're always working on a lot of different stuff. And so it's great to see what's going on here, getting to see the armor mod overhaul, getting to hear about the changes to weapon crafting. Even if I don't agree with those decisions, it's nice to see that they've been thinking about the next year of that system. The core playlist priorities that are coming this year, very excited for those. Commendations, Guardian ranks, all the Fireteam Finder that's coming later in the year, very excited to get images and video clips and thoughts regarding all that stuff. So really, really happy and appreciative to Bungie for giving us that. And I hope that this can be the new standard of information when it comes to expansions moving forward. And hopefully they can take some cues even for seasonal changes, season over season.
Excellent. Well, there we go. That is it for episode 51 Once again, we want to thank all of our patrons and sponsors for keeping the lights running. And of course, a big thanks to our audio engineer, Autodidaktos. Next week is our final episode before Lightfall. We have our review and our thoughts to try and cram in. Who knows what new stuff we'll be getting this week. I think we are on the sort of wind down in terms of information. I think we've got all of what Bungie wanted us to get. I think we'll also get some patch previews and maybe sort of minor things, clarifications. But yeah, we'll try and squeeze in our review and thoughts for both Season 19 and Year 5. That's the Year of the Witch Queen. And we, of course, brace ourselves for a brand new exciting year of Destiny 2. My name is Court, and you can find me over on Twitter as @CourtProjects, on Discord as Court, and you can find my spreadsheets and infographics over on the Massive Breakdowns website, along with some links to other great documentation and applications to enhance your Destiny experience. Saint isn't with us this week, but you can find him over on Discord and Twitter as Saint Kabir. And Impetus, where can we find you?
My name is Impetus. You can find me by that name in Destiny and on Discord, and as Impetus always on Twitter. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week.